I still remember the day my mother introduced Gerald into our lives. I was 17, sitting at our kitchen table doing homework when she walked in with this man, who smiled too wide and shook my hand too firmly. He gave me a vintage watch that evening, told me he would teach me everything about business. For 12 years I believed him. I worked endless hours in his manufacturing firm thinking I was building my future. Today I stood in an empty office, holding a cardboard box of my personal belongings, his words still echoing in my head. "You are too stupid to run this company." But what Gerald did not know was that I had been preparing for this moment for 6 months. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on the man who tried to destroy me, I want to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets a whole lot more satisfying. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Growing up with just my mother, Patricia, was not easy, but it taught me resilience. My father passed away when I was 5 years old, leaving Mom to raise me alone while running a small printing business. She worked 70-hour weeks, her hands constantly stained with ink, but she never complained. She just wanted me to have opportunities she never had. I studied hard, earned a scholarship, and dreamed of one day helping her expand that little printing shop into something bigger. When I was 17, everything changed. Mom met Gerald at a business conference. He owned a successful automotive parts manufacturing company with annual revenues around $3 million. He seemed genuinely interested in our family, especially in mentoring me. He would stop by our house, bring dinner talk about supply chains and market strategies like I was already his business partner. My mother glowed with happiness. For the first time since Dad died, she had someone reliable beside her. After they married, I started working part-time at Gerald's company when I turned 18. I attended college during the day studying business administration, then worked evenings and weekends learning the operations. Gerald taught me about inventory management, customer relations, and quality control. I was exhausted most days, but I felt purposeful. This was my future. This was how I would honor my mother's sacrifices and build something meaningful. I graduated college at 22 and immediately transitioned to full-time work as operations manager. That is when I started noticing small changes in Gerald's behavior. He became colder, more critical. He would point out my mistakes in front of other employees, his voice sharp with impatience. When I suggested ideas for expanding into new markets, he would dismiss them quickly. "You do not have enough experience," he would say, waving his hand like swatting away a fly. My mother noticed my frustration. "Gerald is just stressed about the business," she would tell me, touching my arm gently. "He wants the best for you. Just be patient." So I was patient. I worked harder, stayed later, took on projects nobody else wanted. I thought if I just proved myself enough, Gerald would see my value. But then I started noticing other things. My name was not included in any succession planning documents. When I asked Gerald about it, he got defensive. "Why are you worried about that now? You have plenty of time." When I mentioned it to Mom, she assured me that Gerald had promised to update his will to include me. "He just has not gotten around to it yet," she said. "Do not worry." The first real warning sign came when I accidentally discovered that Gerald had been transferring company assets into a subsidiary that only he controlled. Equipment patents, even some key supplier contracts had been quietly moved. When I asked him about it, he exploded. "Are you questioning my decisions? I built this company before you were even born. Do not forget who gave you this opportunity." I backed off, but the unease settled deep in my stomach. Something was wrong, but I could not quite identify what. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Gerald was just protective of his business. After all, my mother trusted him completely. Then came the day that shattered everything. I was 28 years old when my mother died suddenly from a massive heart attack. No warning, no goodbye, just a phone call from the hospital that arrived too late. I was destroyed. She was my anchor, my reason for everything, and suddenly she was gone. Gerald seemed supportive during those dark weeks. "Your mother wanted you to have a future here," he told me at the funeral reception. "I will make sure of that." But when the lawyer read Mom's will, I felt the ground disappear beneath me. She had left everything to Gerald. The house, her savings, her share of the business. All I received was that vintage watch he had given me years ago, and $20,000. I sat there in the lawyer's office, numb with shock. Gerald put his hand on my shoulder. "Your mother trusted me to take care of you through the company," he explained. "You will inherit when the time is right. This way, there are no tax complications." I wanted to believe him. What choice did I have? My mother was gone. This company was all I had left of the life we had planned together. So I stayed. I buried my grief in work, determined to prove that I deserved a place in this business, that my mother's faith in me had not been misplaced. For the next 2 years, from age 28 to 30, I threw myself into the company with almost desperate intensity. I developed new client acquisition strategies that increased our revenue by 35%. I personally negotiated a $2 million contract with a major automotive manufacturer, spending months building that relationship, understanding their needs, customizing our pitch. It was the biggest deal in company history. The employees respected me. Clients called asking specifically for me. Our suppliers trusted my word. I was not just working in the company anymore. I was becoming its operational heart. But instead of pride, Gerald showed resentment. The more successful I became, the more hostile he grew. He started sabotaging my work in small, calculated ways. He would cancel my meetings without telling me, making me look unreliable to clients. He would refuse to approve budgets I needed, then criticize me for projects running behind schedule. In staff meetings, he would interrupt me constantly, dismissing my reports with comments like "Carlton got lucky" or "anyone could have done that." I tried to understand. Maybe he felt threatened. Maybe he was struggling with getting older, watching someone younger take more responsibility. I kept my head down and continued working, believing that results would speak louder than office politics. Then I found the email. It was late one evening, around 9 p.m. I was using Gerald's computer to access a shared file because mine had crashed. His email was open and I saw a message thread with a corporate acquisition firm. My blood went cold as I read through the correspondence. Gerald was negotiating to sell the company for $4 million. The deal was nearly finalized. But here is what made my hands shake. There was no mention of me anywhere in those emails. No discussion of what would happen to the employees. No consideration for the people who had built this company's recent success. Gerald was going to take the money and walk away, and I would be left with nothing. Again, I copied those emails to a flash drive, my heart pounding. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about my mother, about those 12 years of my life, about every weekend I had sacrificed, every family event I had missed. I had given this company everything, and Gerald was erasing me like I had never existed. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to the financial records I had access to. What I discovered was even worse than I imagined. Gerald had not just transferred some assets to shell companies. He had moved almost everything of real value. The best machinery, the most valuable patents, the contracts with our top 3 clients. He had created 3 separate corporations, all under his sole control, and funneled the company's core assets into them. The plan was brilliant in its cruelty. He would sell the main company as a functioning business, pocket $4 million, but the buyer would essentially be purchasing an empty shell. All the valuable pieces would remain in Gerald's possession through those hidden companies. The new owner would be left with buildings, debts, and a hollowed-out operation. Meanwhile, Gerald would disappear with everything that actually mattered. One evening, I found something else. Buried in old files in the storage room, I discovered an original copy of my mother's will from before she married Gerald. In it, she had left 40% of her share in her printing business to me, with instructions that if she ever combined it with another venture, that percentage should carry over. But Gerald's lawyers had made that document disappear, replacing it with the version that left everything to him. I sat in that dusty storage room holding my mother's original wishes in my hands, and something inside me shifted. This was not about my hurt feelings anymore. This was theft. This was Gerald stealing my mother's legacy and spitting on her memory. I called my college friend David Brennan, who had become a corporate lawyer. Over coffee the next day, I showed him everything I had found. His face grew serious as he reviewed the documents. "Carlton, this is fraud," he said quietly. "You could send him to prison for this. We could file a lawsuit, freeze his assets, but it might take years." "I do not have years," I told him. "And I do not want to just sue him. I want justice. Real justice." We spent the next 3 hours planning. David helped me understand the legal framework, showed me what I could and could not do. But the strategy, that was mine. Over the following months, I started making quiet moves. I reached out to our 3 biggest clients, the ones whose contracts Gerald had transferred to his shell companies. I took them to lunch one by one and talked about the future. I never badmouthed Gerald directly. I just asked questions. "Are you satisfied with the current service? What would you need to see in a partner going forward? Would you be interested in working with a new company that could offer better pricing and more innovative solutions?" I contacted our best engineers and technicians. Over beers after work, I asked about their career goals, their frustrations, what kind of company they wish they could work for. I talked to our suppliers about my vision for ethical business practices and long-term partnerships. I was not stealing anything. I was building relationships. I was reminding people that businesses are not just contracts and assets. They are people who choose who they want to work with. Then, 6 months after I found those emails, Gerald made his move. It was a Monday morning. He called an all-staff meeting, which was unusual. Everyone crowded into the conference room, confused and curious. I walked in and immediately felt the tension. Gerald stood at the head of the table, his face red, his jaw tight. "Carlton," he began, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I have reviewed your performance over the past few months. You have been a disappointment to this company, and to me personally." The room went silent. I stood there, my heart steady, my mind calm. I had known this was coming. He started listing complaints. Incompetent management. Careless handling of client relationships. Inappropriate use of company resources. Each accusation was a lie, but he delivered them with such confidence that I could see doubt creeping into people's faces. Then he raised his voice, practically shouting, "You are too stupid to run this company. You have always been too stupid. I gave you opportunities your mother could never have provided, and you squandered every single one." He paused for dramatic effect. "You are fired. Security will escort you out immediately. Clean out your desk and leave your access cards and keys." The room was frozen. Some people looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. A few, like my assistant Marcus, looked devastated. But I felt strangely peaceful. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. I stood up slowly. "I understand," I said calmly. "I will clear my desk immediately. Thank you for the opportunity." Gerald looked almost disappointed, like he had wanted me to beg or argue. But I just nodded to the security guards and walked out. As I packed my belongings into a cardboard box, Marcus appeared beside me. "Carlton, I am so sorry," he whispered. "This is wrong. I know," I told him quietly. "But sometimes wrong things happen for the right reasons. I will be in touch. Keep your phone on." I walked out of that building with my box of personal items, and I was smiling, because everything was going exactly according to plan. That evening I sat in my apartment and opened my laptop. Every document I had collected over 6 months was organized and ready. I called David, and we reviewed everything one more time. Then I started making phone calls. The first call went to Robert Chen. No, wait. Robert Harrison, the CEO of our largest client, the one with the $2 million contract. "Robert, this is Carlton. I know you heard I left the company today. I wanted to reach out personally before you hear rumors." We talked for an hour. I explained that I was starting a new manufacturing company, Precision Manufacturing Solutions, focused on quality innovation and customer partnership. I offered him a deal, 15% better pricing than Gerald's company, faster turnaround times, and a guarantee that I would personally oversee his account. "Give me 2 weeks," Robert said. "Let me see what you build. If it looks solid, we will talk about transferring the contract." I made similar calls to our other 2 major clients. Both were cautiously interested. Then I called the engineers and technicians I had been cultivating relationships with. "I cannot promise easy money right away," I told each of them. "But I can promise you equity, respect, and a chance to build something real. Are you interested?" Within a week, 3 senior engineers had given notice at Gerald's company. 5 skilled technicians followed. Marcus quit and brought with him detailed knowledge of every client account, every supplier relationship, every operational process. He did not steal documents. He did not need to. He had lived and breathed that company for 8 years. He knew it all. I used my $20,000 inheritance from Mom to set up the initial business registration and rent a small facility. David helped me structure everything legally. 3 friends from college loaned me money to purchase our first equipment. Within 2 weeks of being fired, Precision Manufacturing Solutions was operational. Then the real work began. I called our suppliers. "Listen," I told them. "You have known me for years. You know I pay on time, I treat people fairly, and I deliver what I promise. I am starting something new, and I need your support. Can you work with me?" Most of them said yes. Some because they liked me better than Gerald. Others because they were smart enough to see which way the wind was blowing. Within a month I had secured supply contracts that matched what Gerald's company had, sometimes with better terms, because suppliers were willing to support a fresh start. Now came the critical part. Robert Harrison called me back. "Carlton, I have been watching what you have built. I am impressed. I want to bring my contract over to you, but I need to know you can handle the volume." "I can," I told him. "And I will prove it. Give me a trial run. 1 order. If I deliver on time and at the quality you need, we move the whole contract." He agreed. We delivered that trial order 3 days early and exceeded every quality specification. The contract transferred. Then the second major client moved over. Then the third. Within 3 months of being fired, I had captured 60% of Gerald's revenue base. But I was not done. I reached out to smaller clients who had been underserved by Gerald's company businesses he thought were too small to matter. I offered them excellent service at fair prices. Word spread. Our reputation grew. Meanwhile, Gerald's company was collapsing. Without key employees, he could not maintain quality. Without major clients, his revenue dropped 70%. The shell companies he had created full of assets, but no actual operations, became worthless. Equipment is only valuable if you have people who know how to use it, and clients who need what it produces. I watched it all happen through my network of contacts. Gerald started taking loans to cover operating costs. He laid off workers. He tried desperately to find new clients, but his reputation was damaged. Word gets around in our industry. People knew what he had done to me, and they remembered how I had treated them with respect. 6 months after firing me, Gerald's company was drowning in $800,000 of debt. The acquisition deal with the corporation fell through because due diligence revealed the asset transfers and the weakened client base. Nobody wanted to buy a failing company run by a man known for betrayal. That is when I made my move. I called Gerald and asked to meet. He agreed, probably hoping I would offer some kind of reconciliation. We met at a coffee shop near the old office. He looked terrible. He had aged years in just months. His hands shook slightly as he held his coffee cup. "Carlton," he started, his voice lacking its usual authority. "I know we have had our differences, but perhaps we can work together again. You have done well with your new company. Maybe we could partner." I shook my head. "I am not here to partner, Gerald. I am here to make you an offer. I want to buy your company." He almost laughed. "You cannot afford it." I slid a piece of paper across the table. "My offer is $1. In exchange, I will assume all debts and keep the remaining employees on payroll." His face went purple. "You think I will sell my company to you for $1? Are you insane?" I leaned back, my voice calm. "You have 2 choices. Sell to me for $1, and I will take over the debts and save whatever remains of what my mother helped build. Or refuse. Watch the company go bankrupt within 3 months, lose everything anyway, and leave those employees with nothing. Your choice." He stared at me, hatred burning in his eyes. But he knew I was right. A week later, we signed the papers. Gerald transferred ownership of his company to me for $1. I became the owner of the business that had fired me 6 months earlier. The day we finalized the paperwork, I looked at him across the conference table. "You called me too stupid to run this company, Gerald. But I knew what you were doing 6 months before you fired me. I spent that time building relationships with everyone who mattered. You had the title, but I had their trust." I paused, letting that sink in. "And about my mother's will, my lawyer found the original. We both know you committed fraud. I could send you to prison right now." His face went pale. "But I will not," I continued. "Because watching you lose everything is punishment enough. You took my mother from me. You tried to steal her legacy. But in the end, you taught me something valuable. You taught me that real power does not come from titles or ownership papers. It comes from how you treat people. And that is something you never understood." Gerald left that conference room a broken man. I watched him walk away, his shoulders hunched, his confidence shattered. And I felt no joy in his suffering. Just a quiet sense of justice served. 1 year after Gerald fired me, Precision Manufacturing Solutions had annual revenues of $3 million. We had paid off all debts, expanded our facilities, and employed 70 people. The division that used to be Gerald's company was fully integrated, and everyone from the old place who had treated me fairly still had their jobs. I made Marcus my partner, giving him 20% equity. "We built this together," I told him. "You deserve to own part of it." I did the same for 3 key engineers and 2 senior technicians. Shared ownership, shared success. Gerald disappeared from the industry. I heard through former contacts that he had moved to another state, working small consulting jobs, living in a modest apartment. I never reached out. There was nothing left to say. He had his consequences. I had my peace. But peace did not come immediately, I have to admit. In the months after acquiring Gerald's company, after the adrenaline faded, I felt hollow. Victory had been satisfying, but it had not filled the hole my mother's absence left. I still missed her every single day. I still wished I could call her and tell her what I had accomplished. I started seeing a therapist, someone who specialized in grief and family trauma. Dr. Sarah Martinez helped me understand that carrying anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I had won my battle, but I needed to win the peace too. That meant truly letting go of the resentment, the bitterness, the what-ifs. Every Sunday I visited my mother's grave. I would sit there on the grass and tell her about the company, about the people we were helping, about the culture we were building. Mom, I would say out loud, I did it. Not for revenge. To honor what you started. To prove that kindness and integrity can win. I hope I made you proud. Slowly, I started reconnecting with parts of my life I had neglected during those intense years. I reached out to college friends I had not spoken to in ages. I joined a basketball league on weekends. I even started dating Sophie, a junior architect I met at a networking event. She understood the long hours and the pressure, but she also reminded me that life was more than work. I also started a scholarship fund called the Patricia Hartley Memorial Scholarship for students who had lost parents and wanted to study business. I wanted to help kids who grew up like me, who needed not just money, but mentorship and opportunity. Every year we select 5 recipients and pair them with successful business leaders who commit to guiding them. Some evenings I sit in my office looking out at the city skyline as the sun sets, and I think about how far I have come. From that 17-year-old kid meeting Gerald for the first time to this moment. The journey was brutal, but it taught me things I could never have learned any other way. I learned that blind trust, even in family, can be dangerous. Love does not mean you stop being smart. My mother trusted Gerald completely, and it cost her legacy. I will not make that mistake again. But I also will not become cynical. I will just be wiser about where I place my faith. I learned that a company is not really about assets, contracts, or bank accounts. It is about people. When you treat people with respect, invest in their growth, and share success fairly, they will follow you anywhere. That is power nobody can take away, no matter what papers they sign or what titles they hold. I learned the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about making someone suffer because you are hurting. Justice is about making things right, restoring balance, protecting what matters. I did not destroy Gerald because I wanted him to feel my pain. I did it because I needed to protect what my mother built and prove that integrity could triumph over manipulation. Most importantly, I learned about freedom. For years, I lived in fear of losing what I thought I deserved, constantly trying to prove my worth to someone who would never acknowledge it. Now, I understand that the only thing any of us truly deserve is what we build with our own hands, what we earn through our character and actions. Everything else is temporary. I keep that vintage watch Gerald gave me all those years ago on my desk. Not as a memento of him, but as a reminder of my mother who was there when he gave it to me. The watch still runs perfectly, keeping steady time. Sometimes I look at it and think about how time reveals everything. Lies truth, character weakness. You just have to be patient enough to let it do its work. People sometimes ask me if I regret how things turned out, if I wish Gerald had been different, if I wish I could have had the family business experience I dreamed about as a teenager. The answer is no. Because that struggle, that betrayal, that fight for survival, made me stronger and wiser than comfort ever could have. Gerald called me too stupid to run a company. Maybe I was stupid for trusting him as long as I did. But I was smart enough to learn, patient enough to plan, and strong enough to rebuild. And in the end, that is all that matters. So here I am at 32 years old, running a successful company built on principles my mother would be proud of. We treat our employees like family. We deliver on our promises. We build long-term relationships instead of chasing short-term profits. And every day I get to prove that doing business with integrity is not just idealistic. It actually works. Sometimes the people who try to break you end up teaching you how strong you really are. They show you what you are capable of when you have no choice but to fight for what is right. Gerald gave me that gift even though he never intended to. He pushed me to the edge, and I discovered I could fly. Life is not perfect now. Business has challenges. Some days are harder than others. But every morning when I walk into that office, I know it is mine, because I earned it, not because someone gave it to me or because I inherited it. Every success belongs to me and the team I built. And that feeling, that ownership of my own destiny, is worth more than anything Gerald ever could have given me. I look at that vintage watch one more time, then turn back to my computer. There is work to do, clients to serve, employees depending on me. The past is behind me where it belongs. The future is ahead, full of possibility. And this time I am writing my own story. Have you ever had someone underestimate you, only to prove them completely wrong? Have you ever had to choose between revenge and justice? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming betrayal and building success from the ground up. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is possible to rise above those who try to keep you down. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you respond when life tests your character. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone convince you that you are not capable of greatness. Until next time,